name is Dev, and as we enter the enchanting realm of literature, we welcome librarians who stand as guardians, nurturing the love for reading in the hearts of the young and the old. Their collective wisdom and diverse experiences serve as an inspiration for fellow bibliophiles and educators alike. Today, we embark on a fascinating journey into the world of libraries, guided by three voices of remarkable librarians from different countries across the globe. Anne Lazim, the seasoned librarian who graced the halls of CLPE in the UK, Nadine Bailey, the passionate teacher and librarian from the American School of Dubai, and the visionary founder, Dalbir Kaur Madan, the visionary founder of One Up Library, and Katie Day, the dedicated librarian of the Tanglin Trust School. These luminaries share their invaluable insights, mined from years of dedicated service, on the art of nurturing readers and fostering a lifelong love for reading. As they illuminate the path to cultivating literary passions, their words weave a tapestry of knowledge and enthusiasm. Please welcome Ms. Anne Lazim, Ms. Nadine Bailey, Ms. Katie Day, and Ms. Dalbir Kaur Madan.
Hello, parents, educators, librarians out here. I grew up with a version, a librarian is a gatekeeper. If you walk your memory down 30, 40 years back, that's the time I was in school. And these three ladies inspired people like us to dream of opening a library that can help us, all of us dream a real role of librarian. And that, as Katie says, a library shows you how to be an independent learner for life because it teaches you how to search and look for information. So we have three stalwarts, as Dave introduced, Katie Day, Nadine, and Anne. And I'll be moderating a session to give you bit-size and bite-size information that can nurture your homes, nurture your schools to be creating culture of library, as you heard Linda Supark talking about, creating a culture of library in your community where books are treasured. So the first question, Katie, to you, Nadine and Anne, and we can begin with Anne. What do you see your role in growing readers in your community?
Is that switch? Yes, it's switched on, I can tell. Yes, hello everybody. My role's been quite different really from Nadine's and Katie's in the last 20, 30 years. I started off as a children's librarian in a public library in the UK. I moved on to being a secondary school librarian for a few years. And then about 30 years ago, I moved to something which is quite a unique organisation really. At that time it was called the Centre for Language in Primary Education, which is quite interesting in view of the last talk. And then some years ago it was changed to Centre for Literacy in Primary Education, and that was kind of in keeping with sort of educational vocabulary at the time. I won't say more about that than that. The slide you see here is the library at CLPE. It didn't always look like that. It's very much a library of for people to come and see what books are available. It's not a lending library. The central purpose of it is for teachers and other educationists to come and see what books for children are available. And it's a curated collection because there are a ridiculous number of books published in the UK every year, I have to say, something like 9,000 to 10,000. And that includes new editions and so on, but still, it's an enormous number. And so teachers and others really need to have a pathway through that. That's kind of the purpose of that library. A few years ago, we had a new chief executive, and she had lots of forward-looking ideas and suggested that we should really make it even more of a showcase than it was already. And we crowdfunded to get proper new shelving done. So that's what you see there is the library with all these illustrations from books that we recommend and so on. And it's mainly a library used by adults, I have to say. But sometimes children are welcomed into it, not as a regular thing, but often rather special occasions. Sometimes children would come and with their teachers to have a look at the books and then choose books that they might recommend for their own school libraries. So children had a say in what was bought. But this particular slide, I just actually, people were saying about whether social media was so positive or negative the other day. I just happened to see one of my former colleagues, this picture he'd put on Twitter of the CLP library with a group of children, and they're involved in a workshop with the illustrator Ed Veer, who you can just see just at the back of the room there. And he's doing this drawing workshop with them in the library. So I just felt that's such a great picture to show the library in action. So that's what that is. So what my role in my community was, I mean, when I was working in a public library in a school, it was very much serving my immediate local community. What CLPE does is work with people. It started off being an organisation just working in London, but now works with teachers all over the country and abroad. And one of the, I mean, I hate to say positive thing coming out of the pandemic, but they started doing now courses which teachers can access from around the world online, which without the pandemic would have taken a few more years to develop probably. So even more people can access it. And finally, just for now, I'll say that obviously not everybody can visit the library. It's in quite a good place. If you're in London, it's actually a few minutes walk from Waterloo Station, but obviously not everybody can visit. So one of the things we developed, and I'll say a bit more about that in a few minutes, is core book collections, which are now an online resource. And I'll say a bit more about that later on and let the others get a word in.
No, so what question?
So how do you see your role in growing readers? As Anne talks about training teachers, bringing a core list to teachers, how do you see growing readers in your own community?
Yeah, growing readers, that's our job description, right? And so as a library, it's funny, I want to kind of get into can I talk about the initiative? Okay, this is one initiative that I've used to grow readers. Okay, but as Anne said, so this CLPE, which I have known for years and years, and I love the idea of the core collections. So in schools that I've gone to, I've instituted it, and a core collection would be 25 books right now in the school I'm in, say for middle school. So 25 books for year 7, 25 books for year 8, 25 books for year 9. And these are not books they have to read at all. This is books I kind of say, don't leave year 7 without trying these books. These are ones not to be missed. And when kids say, I don't know what to read, I'll say, let's walk over to the core collection wall. And then you see these books in multiple copies. We might have 5 to 6 copies of each. And then every year we survey the kids and say, so how many of these did you read this year? Which ones did you, I think we have a survey goes something like, I read it and I liked it, I read it and I didn't like it, or I have no opinion on this book and have no interest in reading it. And then we look at that and take off 5 books. And then we say to the kids, what 5, we're going to put 5 new books on. Do you have books you recommend? So every year it gets refreshed, and it's a balanced one. There'll be nonfiction, fiction, graphic novels, different genres, some new, some old, and it's just a wonderful way to get conversations going. And then we started and realized that we have middle school. We want to grow the readers there because they come out of primary school. Those kids coming out of primary school are such fantastic readers. They borrow so many books. I mean, every time they come to the library, I track what the borrowing is. And then year 7, super high. Year 8, year 9, ooh. Then we go into the first 2 years, the GCSE years in the British qualification system, so that would be grades 9 and 10. Those kids don't really read, no offense, but I also don't get access to them on a regular basis the way I do the middle schoolers. But then we thought the first year of the 2 final years, so the first year of the A levels or the IB diploma program, we grab those kids. We think this is the last chance we might get to get them to pleasure read. So we came up with a core collection for them. And we tried to make it short or classics or something that they might, even in a university interview, be able to talk to about. And we bring those year 12s in, and man, we can see they're borrowing, at least that first year. By the last year, they're finishing the IB diploma. It's a crawl. They're not reading for pleasure anymore. They're just trying to get out and survive. But anyway, this is one of the best things that we have done and really stand behind.
Okay. There's a very famous book called Steal Like an Artist, and us librarians are great at stealing. And so I stole the core collection from Katie and put it in my school. And I find now the origin story is that it actually came from Anne. What I want to talk about a little bit, since you've heard all about core collections, is access. So I've moved to a new school a year ago. And this isn't something I invented, but it arose a little bit out of COVID time and my predecessor. And that is, we make it so easy for students to get a book. So they can basically put any book on hold, and we will deliver it to their classroom during their next language lesson. So they put the book on hold, and every lesson, my wonderful assistants will go and check they'll pull the books and they'll have them on piles, and so block this will go there and block there will go there. And at the same time, we have collection boxes in the classroom, so they can drop off the books they finished reading there, and we'll pick them up as well. So you may think, oh, that's a lot of work, that's a lot of extra walking around. But what I found is if I can do it, I want to do it, because that means I come into the classroom, I try to be very quiet and unobtrusive, but the students are like, hi, Miss Nadine, and they'll be passing me the books, or they'll be waiting for the books. So it increases my visibility, because the teachers don't always have time to bring their students in regularly, so out of sight, out of mind. And this way they see me regularly, they see the library assistants regularly, and they see that whole book exchange thing in their classrooms. The other thing is, I know Lucy Calkins is a bit of a no-go zone at the moment, but one thing she did do is the concept of classroom libraries. And because our school was a Lucy school, we have brilliant classroom libraries, and my language teachers have been so kind. When I arrived a few months later, they invited me to do a study with them to increase the diversity of the books in their classroom libraries. And in particular, which really warmed my heart, was they say we're seeing a lot more South Asian students, and we want more books about Indian lives and Indian protagonists. And so funny you say that. And, of course, I could bring in some of the Neve books, I could bring in some of the diaspora books. So I think access is amazing. And then, also co-curating with teachers and teachers reading. And I'm really blessed with teachers who are prepared. I can go to them and say, I've just read this book, you have to read it. I think it's going to be brilliant for your class. And they'll read it over the weekend, or they'll read it over the break, and they'll then start selling it to the kids, and then we just can't keep up with demand.
Wonderful. So what I hear is having a core list, having a core collection and curating books to the needs of middle school. I hear access, that going to the classroom, that's fabulous. And then classroom libraries, because many in India fear that classroom libraries may interfere with the borrowing of the main library. So lessons that you have learned from these initiatives and that any of the librarians here want to implement. So those lessons that will take them closer to implementing such programs.
Right. Can I just say a bit more about the core collections? Because I just wanted to give others a chance to speak. No, it's not that slide, it's another slide. Right, yeah. Okay, so I'll just explain a bit about the rationale behind how we started doing it. We in the 1990s, or possibly even a little bit earlier, and there was a lot of debate then about, well, there always is a lot of debate about how children learn to read, and I'm not going to go into all of that. But there was, one of the things was, do you use reading scheme, or do you use real books? He's put inverted commas around it. So CLP is very much in favour of using real books. We used to say that teachers should make their own choices. There is a place for reading schemes, perhaps in conjunction with real books. But one of the things that teachers really faced was selecting the books, because as I mentioned earlier, there's so many books to look at and choose from, but also the strategies they might use to introduce those books to children. So we kind of evolved this, the core books, and there are teaching sequences around some of the books that the teachers write, but that wasn't kind of my area of responsibility. But the choosing the books to go in the core books, so we made different, so the filters there of different how we did it, but originally it was a printed list, and it became a bit unwieldy to update it regularly, and then it became a website, which is much better because it means we can update it regularly, more people can access it, and so on. But we basically divided books into learning to read books, so they might have all kinds of reasons why they were learning to read book, a literature core, and an information book core across each 2-year groups. So 5 to 7-year-olds, 7 to 9, so on. Much as I dislike pigeonholing books for different age groups, for example, I think picture books should be for all ages, not just for very young children, but teachers needed a bit of guidance, and that was the reason for doing it like that. But they're not finely graded, so it's not, you have to read these before you can move to the next level. It's not like that at all. So that was how that evolved, and so it's a printed list, but people can add to it. It's an annotated list as well. So what I always used to do was make connections between books in one of the books with other books on the same theme or something like this. Or say all the wordless books, people could find all of those by putting in keywords. So the different ways of accessing the collection. So that was kind of the rationale behind the core books. And they were intended really, I suppose, as classroom collections, in fact, though a lot of teachers did use them as a basis for working on their school library and updating their school library as well. So the lessons, but you said lessons learned. Yes, I was just about to say about that. Well, for me, one of the most important things really is reading widely yourself as a librarian, so you can convey that to children. Though I must say the children here, all the children we saw this morning, I was absolutely bowled over by how much they knew about reading and the books that they'd read, and it made me think I need to do more reading because they know such a lot already. But people do need a bit of a pathway through, and so I think reading more widely and also reading aloud. I just think that is one of the most important things at any age. To keep on reading to children. I read to my own children until they were in their teens. I carried on doing that, and that's. I think that's a very basic thing. A lot of people love audiobooks. I struggle with audiobooks because I find my mind wanders, and I don't. But lots of people really love them. So I think the lesson is read widely and read aloud. Yeah.
Go back, go up to this one. Okay, just going to comment on another. So if curation and the role of the librarian to put the best books, the best new books, the best old books in front of students. We also started having students become curators. So we call it the featured readers. And so every 2 weeks, there are these 2 shelves in the library, and there is a student, or sometimes one student does it, like you can see Saket here on year 7CY. These are his 12 highly recommended books. And then on the left, Rosie and Paulina in 8, they decided to share their posters. So we say, you just tell us the 12 book covers you want. You give us an avatar. We make this beautiful A3 poster. You print it out, and we put it on the shelf. And then I text them, and I say, starting Monday, you're in charge of your shelf. And their job is to come in and put not just these 12 books, well, these 12 books might be out. They have to keep that shelf filled with books that they recommend to other students. So they are, for 2 weeks, the ones recommending books. And it's highly popular because we give them the poster when it's over with. And we've had, even older kids. Some year 12 said, "Can I do it?" Yes, you can do it. Just give us the 12 book covers. And we have this whole little schedule. And because it's 2 shelves, we alternate. So every week there's one new curator on display. And anyway, you can see there. Anyway, so that's just one of the best things that, because, and I say to them too, if you put a book on there, they said, "Oh, does the book have to be in the library?" I said, "No." I said, "Put on your favorite books." I said, "If I don't have it, I'll buy it." So it's a way that also we're getting the student choice and voice and increasing the library collection.
So I've moved from, where am I? I don't even know where I am now. Let me get back. Okay, I've moved from an international school to an American school. And wow, was that a culture shock for me. It's probably the biggest. It was more of a culture shock than moving to China. And what I discovered, so, I feel a little bit like an anthropologist when I get to a new school, like, oh, what's happening and, where is it at? And what I discovered was that the school is sports crazy, super sports crazy. And in my first, half of the year, I noticed that a lot of students wanted sports books. So they wanted books on, not cricket, but on football and basketball and soccer and that kind of thing. And I was confronted with a new library. I didn't know the books, and I was rushing around trying to find the basketball books or the soccer books. And so I suggested we genreified. So I suggested we started a new genre called sports. So anyway, we got all those books out, and we put them on the shelf. And then I noticed the students were gravitating there. They were reading a lot of the sports books, but they would want their specific sport. They wouldn't just want any sports book. So at the beginning of this year, after I do a lot of data analysis. I'm a data person, and I noticed we only had something like 300 sports books, but there were 600 borrowing. So each book was being borrowed on average twice. So that's a really good return on investment. When you're buying books, you want to make sure they're circulating and they're being used. And then I thought, well, what else do we have in sports? And I said to my co-librarian, you know what, let's make a whole sports section, and we're going to pull out every single book we have on sports. That's not the adult, really sophisticated ones, but anything that's middle and high grade school appropriate. So we pulled out all the manga, we pulled out all the bios, all the memoirs, non-fiction, the fiction, and we created the sports section here. And we've only had it now for just over 2 months. And what's happened is our borrowing of non-fiction sports books has doubled just in those 2 months. So it's definitely paying off, and I'm trying to increase. Unfortunately, and if there are any authors here in the audience, there are not enough books written about sport. And I had this conversation with Katie about somebody reading a book on wrestling because they were wrestling obsessed, and the book. The subtext was a story about somebody going through a really hard time in their life. And because it was a cool sports book, they could get all that social and emotional stuff that they needed at that time, but it was a cool sports book. So authors, please, we need more sports books. The other thing I did, and don't tell the kids in my school, but I'm totally not interested in soccer. But they needed a volunteer for the girls' soccer team, a co-coach. And I said, yes, I'll do it. Was it the best term of my life? Not particularly, but I got to know those girls who otherwise do not come to the library. I got to know them. I got to chat to them. I got to talk to them a little bit about reading. I've got a lot more books about girls' soccer now. And then I went on and I coached cross-country after that. And now I have these people who know me and I know them, and we can have conversations about books which wouldn't have happened otherwise.
I love her dedication.
It's so inspiring to hear you practicing. Know the book, know the reader, and then plan your teaching all around it. It's like the whole circle coming together. So how do you all ensure, whether you're working with teachers, students, and you're in your communities, that engagement is visible in all your programs? Because access, volume, all you can see. So how do you ensure?
First of all, just following on from what Nadine just said, I mean, I think that's one of the things about librarians not being seen in a stereotypical way, not being seen as so much, well, gatekeepers, yes, maybe to some extent, but in a good way, but not just being seen as the solemn lady with a bun who stamps the books out and says shush. There's still that stereotype still around. It's quite amazing, really. But as far as visibility is concerned, I mean, so the thing I'd like to talk about is diversity in children's books. It's something I've always been concerned about throughout my career, from when I first qualified in the 1970s to when I retired 2 years ago, and continue to be, is the lack of, well, particularly ethnic diversity in children's books. And just a few years before I retired, one of my colleagues, Farah Sarouk, who's a teacher, she had the idea of doing this research project called Reflecting Realities. And if you have a look at the CLP website, you can see the reports. I think it's 3 or 4 years now, where she got the UK publishers to submit books that reflected ethnic diversity in some way. And it would be books for primary age, really, up to about 11, 12-year-olds. So not YA books. And she made this spreadsheet where we had to really forensically analyse each of the books that were submitted. And the results are really very interesting. I won't go into details about those, but do have a look at the reports. But what has happened is publishers have started to take notice, and there is much more discussion about this in the UK children's book scene, and there has been an improvement in reflecting realities. I just heard the other day that another organisation, which is, I'm going to type their name now, Inclusive Minds, have been asked to work on something similar around disability. So that's something to watch out for as well. So I've taken disability to mean showing all our communities in various ways, and that's something, that I've been concerned about. And I do feel that for a few false starts where things have improved a bit and then went backwards, there does seem to be improvement. I hope it continues. Yeah.
Okay, no, I'm just going to prompt answer. Okay, go back one slide, Nadine, or 2 slides.
Yes.
Okay, and I think is that reflecting realities. Can you go back to the CLP, the first one? Okay, I meant to put a little link there to say that Reflecting Realities report, but if you go to the CLP site, and we're going to give you at the end the QR code, and you get these slides, and you just click on the images and you'll go there, so you can go to it. And then I'm going to prompt Anne, because we were talking earlier with Dalbir about this thing of measuring success. Yeah. And so now go to the Reading for Pleasure. Because, Anne, you were talking about one measure of your success is, because you're working with teachers, that is how get the teachers reading. So do you want to just comment on this initiative?
Yes. So this isn't a CLP initiative, but we've been, I say we, I actually work there now, but we're very involved with. So certainly there's been more, there are lots of literacy organisations in the UK, and they've all got slightly different focuses. But one of the things that's been talked about a lot is the importance of children, and adults, of everybody actually, reading for pleasure, and that this actually increases life chances, and you can take that in a very broad way. But the Open University and have developed this Reading for Pleasure project, and again, it's a website you can access, and it's and they've been encouraging groups. Teacher-reader groups. So I was saying earlier about teachers need to read more, and certainly do. I think it is very hard because of the kind of record keeping they're expected to do, but they do need to read. And this has been really a good initiative in getting teachers to read more and share their reading with other teachers. So we had one of these groups at CLPE, and it was led by me and one of the teaching staff, and we got teachers to come sign up to it, come along regularly to the CLP library every, I don't know, I think it was once a fortnight or something like that, for about 10 or 12 sessions, we just covered different aspects of reading, but also got people to talk about their own reading. And we did it for a couple of years, and then we were in the middle of what we were working with one group when the pandemic started, and it was very interesting what happened, really, because we continued the group on Zoom, and it kind of made us closer. I was quite emotional thinking about it, really. So me and the teacher involved, we didn't know if people would sort of rock up online as well. And so I was sitting there at my desk at home, and then they all started appearing, and we talked a lot more deeply in some ways about what we were reading, recommended books to each other, and obviously my teacher colleague and I, we suggested things, but we got suggestions in return as well. So I think that whole agenda about reading for pleasure that's being talked about a lot. I don't know if it is in other countries. I'd be really interested to know. Yeah. So that's a link to this. Yeah, creating communities of readers. It's led by somebody who works for the Open University called Teresa Kremin, and certainly, it's worth looking up her book. She's written with other teachers quite a few books around creating communities of readers. So if you don't already know those, it's worth looking at those as well. Yeah.
Now let's go to my the other slide, my third slide. Measuring success. Kind of three ways I would just comment on. So I do have every middle school class comes to our library once a fortnight. And so they come in, and basically every time a class leaves, I have my little folder of the list of names, I run a report on the catalog, and I count up how many books in that class on that day from that class went out. And so I say the number of students out of 24, was it 18 students, or was it 2? It'll be more than 2, depending on, and then how many books were borrowed. So I get this sense, as a class is coming in, I can look and say, like some classes, on those year 7s, it could be, 24 kids, I will have 18 borrowers and 45 books will go out. Okay, then there could be a year 9 class, and maybe it's only 5 students, and maybe it's only 5 books. Again, this is how one sees that. But the other way, a visible way that I know that books are going out. So I have these boxes over here, this read alike. So if you like, so these are lists in the catalog. If you like Coraline, which is going to be like, some scary horror. Or if you like, Keeper of the Lost Cities, which I call a portal fantasy. You're in the real world and you get pulled into another world. And so we have these boxes and we fill them up. The staff know to just, you can go to the QR code, there's a big list, but when a class leaves, I walk by that shelf and I can just see, I really need to, if you like Murder Most Unladylike, that box is almost empty. So that's the way that I'm visually seeing which genres are going out, just not only the numbers of books. And the other thing we have in the catalog, and again, this is all linked, so you can go pull up these lists. So at the end of the year, when we ask them the survey, what was, which books of the core collection have you read? Which ones did you like? We also have this very general question. What was the best book you read in year 7 or year 8 or year 9? And again, it doesn't have to be a book from the library. And then when those results come in, I'm buying the books that I don't have that they like. And then we have a list in the catalog. And it's cumulative. So for every year, this list is really, really long. So I can also say to a year 7, well, you don't know what to read. Go to the catalog, click on this, where's up there? Year 7 recommendations. Year 7 recommends, and I'll say, over the past few years, this is what other year 7s at the end of the year have said was the best book they read. So, there we go. Very good.
Just quickly, how do you handle book abandonment? Because there's so much children are issuing, they have so much to read. How do you handle if children abandon books or don't read books?
No, there's nothing wrong with abandoning books. You just haven't found the right book yet. Go to the next one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I encourage it. I mean, life's too short. I mean, particularly if you're young. Yeah.
Absolutely. This is what we want librarians to hear more, parents to hear more, that it's okay to abandon books. And your final thing.
Oh, just manga. Oop. Back. Okay, just a note on graphic novels. I think we've said this a million times. Graphic novels, manga, picture books. It's a big part of our collection. I think we bought about 500 graphic novels and manga in the last year, and we probably doubled our collection. This used to be an old magazine stand, and so I've got all the manga series in this old magazine stand, so they can just open the door and find all of it. These little boxes, every country has some acrylic company that can make you boxes, and we have these, they standard for our shelves, and then we have them in 3 or 4 sizes for bigger and smaller boxes. So the kids can just rifle through the collections, find the ones in the right series. So this is in our manga graphic novel section, but we have in all our sections, all our series are like that. They're front-facing, takes up less space. We put them on the core collections list, so out of the 25 books, there will always be 1 or 2 graphic novels, at least 1 picture book. I haven't put a manga on yet, but that will come. Showing students and teachers how to read them. And also, with our grade 7 language department, they had to analyze a story in the past, and they used to do a fiction book, and the first year post-pandemic, they said, this is going to be a tough ask of our class, and we rejigged that whole unit that they had to analyze a picture book instead. So they could choose, it could be wordless, it could be a word picture book. I have a huge, sophisticated picture book collection in the middle high school library, and they got quite a lot out of that, both as teachers. So we looked at Molly Bang's Picture This, about how art is made, and so that of course appealed to our more graphically, artistically minded students, how the angles, the viewpoints, and then they looked at the text and how you can convey so much, count the words, how many words have they got, and they told the story. So
Last question, any advice, recommendation that you would like to give to our community over here, to our parents, teachers, children?
I suppose the main one is read to your children, and obviously listen to what they're interested in reading. If they're maybe not things you didn't want them to read. Lots of people don't like graphic novels, and I think it's a lack of understanding about them sometimes, and they're not sort of just easy reads. They're actually quite complex in many ways. So I think, but just read aloud and tell stories as well where you can. Important thing for my family has been attending a storytelling festival every 2 years. And it is not a festival specifically for children. In fact, on the contrary, and we've all listened together to really good storytellers telling stories, and we also like to tell stories ourselves. And I think we all do that all the time, in fact. So read aloud and tell stories, and then keep yourself informed as much as you can about what children's books are around. It's not always easy because there's a lack of reviewing now, but just find the different ways of finding out about new books and old books as well, actually. Yeah.
Okay. So those of you who have been listening to me for the last 6 years, you'll all know about my ADHD son who never read, didn't want to read. We read to him. We had to read all his IB texts to him, me in English, my husband in Dutch. And I just wanted to say what Renee said. Sometimes you're sowing, and sometimes you're weeding and watering, and sometimes you're harvesting. And my son's now in his 2nd year of university, and he regularly sends me lists of books he wants me to buy for him, and they're not wimpy kid. They are serious. The last one he asked was for Jung's analysis of dreams, and so sometimes you can harvest, and it's wonderful.
We put it on the last slide just so that the cure. I would just agree, the read to your kids. And I think this, like coming to festivals like this and read a book with your kid. Do like a family book club, or just when you see a book your kid is reading, to read it as well and then say, what did you think of chapter 3? The plot took quite a twist, That's it.
Katie talks about every person having a reading story. I think so. Every library can build a story by having the right books, the right people, and the right conditions. And Neve is doing it. And each person in India, every school can build it in a similar manner. So thank you to all of you for your sharing and for sharing your knowledge and your nuggets of thoughts. Thank you so much.
I have a question. Nadine ma'am just now mentioned that she started telling the parents and the kids how to start reading or get them into the reading atmosphere. So I want to know few ideas from her, how actually she started for that.
Say that again. Which one of us said?
Nadine ma'am. Nadine ma'am.
Nadine.
Huh.
I said something. Sorry, I didn't hear your question very well.
My question is, in just few minutes back, you mentioned that you started explaining the parents and the kids how you should start reading for the kids when they are in your lab or when they are into the school library. How it is balanced, and we can make them more into the reading. Like the ideas for that, to convince the parents to read is a very precious thing for the kids.
Yeah, I mean, I've done lots of different things. We run parent sessions at the school. We've run sessions when I was in Singapore, we ran sessions for the nannies who are reading to the students when, you have two working parents and you only have a nanny reading to them. We've modeled read aloud to them, shared our own stories. You just have to keep saying the same thing, and then people will maybe get it up. I think Dolika was saying how she was in a mother-daughter book club when she was in Thailand. So there are so many different ways you can involve parents. We've had, during Book Week, we did a dad read aloud. So we had the dad's corner. So the whole week, different fathers were coming in to read aloud. We've had multilingual read alouds where we find out people from our community in different languages, reading in Hindi or reading in Dutch or reading in French to students. And, so there are lots of ways you can engage the community where they feel it's meaningful.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the most valuable tips. I run a library myself, so I have already taken few tips from you and I will going to implement them. Thank you for the session. One question I have is, I have seen kids who grow from 3 to 5 to 5 to 7 and they end up a diary of wimpy kids and they don't go beyond that. How do I help them to pick the next level for them and then, still be engaged with the books?
A kid stuck at Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Okay, it could be that the seed has been planted and it hasn't sprouted yet. I would just allow them the Diary of a Wimpy Kid, but also bring other books home and put them under their nose. And eventually, it's like, putting compost down on the ground. And then Nadine's saying, and then you just read the other books that you bring home. You just read it to them. Not Slaughterhouse 5.
That's what I read to my son.
When he was stuck on Diary of a Wimpy Kid? Okay. Yeah, try to push the boundaries a little bit, but be patient, I think.
Thank you for a wonderful session. When we think about a librarian's dream and growing readers, I'm also wondering about, and taking on from Dalbir's closing remarks as well, how do we sort of nurture this dream in the many librarians that we have in the many private school libraries in the country? So any thoughts on motivation? I mean, sort of what you have seen work both for intrinsic motivation as well as extrinsic motivation in your cultures to sort of, have the librarians have this dream of growing readers?
Networks. You need to find out or start a professional network for the librarians in your region and in your state or in the country. So I am, like, Singapore is kind of easy because it's an island, and there are maybe, I don't know, we have about 35 private international schools, and we have a network, like I'm the president, so we have 4 meetings a year. We meet in a school so people can tour the other libraries. We might invite a speaker, you know, we could invite someone from the National Library along. So we socialize, we have social events, and we have a Google chat group, you know, a listserv. And so people post questions and say, hey, I'm really struggling. You know, what do you guys recommend when someone's stuck on Diary of a Wimpy Kid? Anyway, it's, you can't beat. Librarians love to meet other librarians, and visiting other libraries, wherever you go knock on the door of a school and say, can I see your library? Because we get so many ideas by visiting each other. Oh, what, Librarians Knowledge Sharing Workshop? Yeah, okay, and there are conferences. So Librarians Knowledge Sharing Workshop is something that happens in Southeast Asia every year. Kartika from Neve just came to my school in February. And we try to keep it to $100 for a 2-day workshop. It's hosted in a school, so it's price reasonable depending on the country. Okay, Singapore was a little expensive on the hotel front. But, and then we do sessions, and we all literally share knowledge with each other. And if you could get that going in here in Bangalore or whatever, the benefit it's just invaluable.
Yeah, just to endorse that, really, networking is something I should have said earlier. We talked about it a little bit when we were talking about with the Reading for Pleasure networks. But yeah, I think a lot of the time librarians are kind of on their own in a school, so it's really important that they can meet other librarians. We used to have I think it still exists actually, a thing called a School Librarians Network, and which was an email list before things like WhatsApp's got going, and that was a really important resource, yeah.
And just had to say, this Librarians Knowledge Sharing Workshop, so it was in Singapore in February. It will be in Jakarta in January, and registration just opened last week. And there will be a limit, because it's limited by the school. It might be 50 people, it might be 60, maybe 70. But anyway, so if you were interested, Librarians Knowledge Sharing Workshop. Also, there's a Facebook group for, International School Library Connection. Nadine is one of the administrators of that. So Facebook to connect, people ask questions, Twitter, TL chat, social media. Email me, I'll tell you the places.
May I? I want to tap into abandonment a little bit more, because I think, when you abandon a book, there's a sense of failure. And for a lot of kids who are starting a book and are struggling readers, failure is really, really tough to deal with, both because it's very visible to the teacher. If if it's something that's being taught in the classroom, it's visible that you failed to complete the book. But even as a reader myself, sometimes I find that this is the first year I've started abandoning books. I have always finished a book.
Congratulations. No, sorry. This is a really important thing. We should be countering that attitude that you have to finish every book when it's reading for pleasure. Classroom is different.
So it took me a long time to realize that I could do it. It was okay because I was missing out on so many other books, but there's only so much time in your life to continue to read. So for kids, though, not abandoning too early is also failure. So how do you determine what's the right time, whether it's page count or attempt or number of days or subject matter? How do they determine for themselves what is the right time to abandon a book?
I would say, when somebody or when a parent drags a child in front of me and says, can you help them find a book? And I look at the kid and I realize this kid does not want to be here. But I say, we're going to walk around. You're going to tell me the last best book you read. I'm going to try to do a little bit. I said, but you have to take home 3 books, at least 3 books. And you are going to, over the weekend, you're going to read 30 pages. I mean, I would look at the child, 30 pages of each book. And you put it down. If the first 30 pages don't grab you, put that one down and go to the next one. And you force them to do this taste testing. And then you come back in on Monday, and I said, and I don't care if on Monday you tell me you didn't like any of these. Okay, back to the drawing board. We're gonna walk through the shelves. And when it's like a game, because I say, this is my job. We might go through 100 books, but you're gonna go through 100 books reading 30 pages of each. And think that, even that's just reading. And okay, maybe I'd say 15 pages. I don't just say one page.
I say 2 chapters.
So thank you everyone for your great questions. Thank you to each one of you for your time. And may we have the right people, the right conditions, and the right books to create more magic. All right, thank you.